Soma was a smart but pathetic nerd with zero chance of ever landing a girlfriend. He looked like the kind of guy who'd munch on math homework as a snack when the fridge was empty. In a divine act of boredom, God yanked him out of his miserable existence and dumped him into another world to do even more math homework to save a kingdom. The kingdom of Elfred was located on the supercontinent Landia, where the Demon Lord's armies were wreaking havoc, seizing land from neighboring countries. To maintain their military and fend off the growing threat, the Chaos Empire had begun demanding gold from all surrounding nations, leaving Elfred teetering on the brink of financial ruin. Soma, still reeling from his ridiculous situation, couldn't fathom what any of this had to do with him until the Prime Minister Marx explained the grim reality. The only way out was to summon a hero to serve as a pawn to the Grand Chaos Empire. Rage bubbled up inside Soma as he realized they planned to turn him into a slave. But worse yet, he feared they would use him as nothing more than a lab rat for the Empire's twisted experiments. Trapped with no escape in sight, Soma formulated a plan to make Elfred strong enough to refuse the Empire's demands, all while first addressing the kingdom's crippling financial woes. After 3 days of scrutinizing the kingdom's dismal finances, King Alfred made a shocking decision. He would step down and crown Soma as the new king. As if that wasn't enough, he announced that Soma would marry his daughter, Lycia, sealing the deal. Word spread like wildfire, and Lycia, bewildered by her father's move, marched straight to confront Soma, calling him an imposter. Soma, unbothered, explained that he'd only agreed to the kingship to avoid being enslaved by the Empire. He had no qualms about canceling the wedding if that was her wish. Shocked by the incompetence of her father, Lycia apologized and asked how Soma planned to raise the money to pay the Grand Chaos Empire. Soma nonchalantly revealed that he had already sold off some of the kingdom's precious jewels to a young merchant in Amadonia. Though Lycia was furious at the loss of the national treasures, Soma calmly assured her that the jewels he sold had little value to the kingdom's status. He planned to delay the payment for a while longer, and Lycia, though begrudgingly, suggested that he should use the money to fortify the kingdom's military instead. However, Soma suggested it would be far wiser for the kingdom to invest the money in providing food and basic necessities for the people, preventing potential unrest. Lycia, initially confident that her people would never rebel, was taken aback when Soma explained that any citizen's first priority was food. When people were hungry, they cared little for anything else. Soma's words struck a chord with Lycia, making her realize that he was indeed a realist. She found herself hoping he could truly save their kingdom. After a month of ruling, Soma discovered that much of the kingdom's technology relied heavily on magic. Transportation was primarily dependent on the use of enormous mythical creatures. One day, while in the throne room, the high priest approached Soma, suggesting he undergo a magical test to determine if he had gained any powers during his summoning. They made their way to a small prayer room, where the priest instructed Soma to touch the head of an ancient gargoyle, a magical artifact said to reveal a person's magical aura and abilities. After completing the ritual, Soma was left confused, unsure of what to make of his newfound powers. Rather than dwelling on it, he simply returned to his duties. Lycia, curious about her new king, decided to surprise him with a visit. When she entered his office, she was taken aback to find 3 feather pens scribbling notes on their own. Soma casually explained that he was using magic to control the pens, revealing that his abilities allowed him to transfer his consciousness into nearby objects and control them independently. Lycia was creeped out by this new power, and Soma, trying to lighten the mood, joked that it could make their honeymoon 4 times as fun. Realizing he had made her uncomfortable, he quickly changed his tune, saying it only made his paperwork easier. When Lycia inquired about his work, Soma explained that he and his staff were going through the country's financial reports, seeking out tax evaders and uncovering cases of embezzlement. By recovering stolen funds and arresting corrupt officials, they could bolster the kingdom's revenue. Lycia was stunned that Soma, a man who had only recently arrived in the kingdom, was so determined to improve the country. The next morning, Soma looked like a corporate zombie, having stayed up late to finish his paperwork. As he passed by Lycia and the staff, he noticed they were all sound asleep. He took a moment to sit next to Lycia, observing her perfectly arched back and golden brown hair. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, inadvertently waking her. Lycia, immediately uncomfortable, asked what he was doing. Not wanting to appear inappropriate, Soma quickly suggested they take a short trip together. During the journey, Lycia teased him for not knowing how to ride a horse. to which Soma humorously replied that while he couldn't ride a horse, he could certainly teach her to ride something else in the future. As they traveled, Licia asked about Soma's family back in his previous world. When Soma admitted he had no family or a girlfriend, Licia seemed relieved. Upon reaching their destination, Soma explained that the kingdom's food shortage was due to farmers switching to cash crops, such as cotton, in response to the demon attacks on the continent. Countries far from the threat, like Alfred, saw an opportunity and began exporting cotton. However, with nearly half of Landia producing cotton, the price of the crop plummeted, and many farmers were forced to quit their work. Licia felt guilty for not understanding this sooner, but Soma reassured her that he was teaching her these things so she could be a better ruler than him in the future. Back at the castle, the two sat down to breakfast and discussed plans to solve the hunger crisis. Soma suggested encouraging farmers to return to growing food crops and finding alternative sources of export. He also proposed that food produced on the farms be sold at a lower price to citizens. During breakfast, a young man with long blonde hair approached their table. Licia introduced him as Ludwin Arx, the commander of the Royal Guard. Ludwin joined them for breakfast, and when he asked Soma if he was facing any difficulties, Soma admitted that he needed more competent people on his team. Licia suggested that Soma announce a job application request to the people of Ifraten using the Gemstone Broadcaster, a special media tool reserved only for the king. She also recommended excluding uneducated citizens from applying, but Soma, needing all the help he could get, insisted that everyone be given a chance. To motivate the masses, he planned to quote General Cao, the famous Chinese warlord known for his ability to gather talented individuals under his rule. With excitement, Soma delivered an inspiring speech as the entire country gathered to listen. He outlined his plans to rebuild the kingdom through new strategic policies, but emphasized that he would need a capable workforce to achieve these goals. Soma urged talented individuals, regardless of their social standing, to apply for a chance to join his royal council. To make it even more enticing, he promised the finalists the Talent Hunter Royal Certificate of Elfrieden and a substantial cash prize. The next morning, Licia reflected on Soma's words and fantasized about starting a family with him. However, her musings were interrupted when her handmaiden informed her that it was time to prepare for the royal event. In the throne room, Soma sat on his majestic throne, with Marx, Ludwin, and Licia standing before him. The finalists knelt in respect, though one finalist, a dark elf named Aisha, refused to bow, citing her customs. Ludwin, ready to discipline her, was stopped by Soma, who assured him it was fine. He ordered the others to stand, and Marx began announcing the talents of the contestants. The first finalist, Aisha Udgard, came forward. She hailed from a secluded magical forest, and Marx praised her as a skilled fighter with unparalleled combat abilities. Soma, curious about her tribe, used his powers to learn more. Aisha, however, surprised everyone by asking for help with a pressing issue in her community rather than a cash prize. Her tribe's forest had been drying up due to larger trees blocking sunlight, preventing smaller plants from thriving. Soma suggested that her people regularly cut down some of the trees to prevent natural disasters. Impressed by his wisdom, Aisha pledged her loyalty to Soma, even offering herself as his royal plaything when he was lonely. Soma promised to visit her tribe one day to teach them the solution. Next, Marx called forward Juna, a beautiful woman from the Lagoon City. As Juna walked toward them, her graceful movements and beauty caught Soma's attention. Licia, noticing Soma's gaze, cleared her throat and turned away. Marx announced that Juna was not only the most beautiful woman in Landia, but also a gifted singer, inheriting a melodious voice from her mermaid ancestors. Soma, intrigued, asked her to perform a song. However, Juna revealed she only knew Billie Eilish songs. To solve the problem, Soma pulled out his smartphone and gave Juna a pair of earpods, playing a song from his world. After listening, Juna sang the tune with such emotion that the crowd erupted in admiration, and the single men in the country were captivated by her performance. Soma praised Juna for her Grammy-worthy performance, and she, eager to learn more songs from his world, hinted at wanting private lessons. Marx called out the next finalist, an overweight man from the village of Pot named Pancho. As the plus-size contestant stepped forward, he stumbled and fell flat on his face. He quickly got back up, and Marx introduced him as someone with the unique ability to consume an endless amount of food, a feat that seemed physically impossible to others. Pancho also had extensive knowledge of exotic dishes from across the continent. When Soma heard this, he jumped from his throne, excited, and declared Pancho the most talented person in the room. Pancho, overwhelmed with emotion, began to cry, but Soma reassured him, saying that his extraordinary eating skills would be essential to saving the kingdom. He awarded Pancho the royal title of Chef Supreme, much to the delight of the man. After the fatso was recognized, Marks called for the next finalist, a mysterious figure named Hakuya Kunaming, who wore a black kimono and had striking purple eyes. Marks announced that Hakuya was one of the most intelligent men in the world, with an IQ comparable to Einstein's. Hakuya's uncle had advised him to apply for the competition, and Soma, intrigued, offered him the position of royal librarian. However, Hakuya politely declined, stating that he preferred to serve the kingdom as a military advisor. Soma was surprised by Hakuya's response and asked Kazuya to explain his reasoning. Kazuya explained that Hakuya respected Soma for accepting Pancho, despite his unusual talent. Hakuya had expected Soma to dismiss the weird fatso, but instead, Soma embraced his talents, which earned Hakuya's admiration. Impressed by Hakuya's calm demeanor and elegant way of speaking, Soma decided to conduct a special aptitude test to determine whether Hakuya was fit for the demanding military advisor role. Next, Marks announced the final finalist, a beast girl from an ancient wolf tribe named Tomo. She had the rare ability to communicate with animals, a talent that fascinated Soma. However, as he pondered how best to use her gift, Tomo, though shy, spoke up. She had something important to tell him, but her voice was so quiet that Soma could barely hear her. Moving closer, he encouraged her to speak without fear. Finally, she whispered a secret into his ear, and though Soma was shocked by the revelation, he calmly pretended to be unfazed. After the ceremony, Soma and his 3 royal allies gathered with Tomo in his office, where he revealed that Tomo could also communicate with demons. Demons were known to be an advanced race with their own language, and it was believed that no one could converse with them. However, Tomo explained that she had met and spoken to a wolf demon months ago while playing in a nearby forest, and surprisingly, the demon had not harmed her. Though Licia and the others were skeptical, Soma assured them that the story was true. He explained that if they could find more demons for Tomo to communicate with, they might be able to end the war once and for all. However, Soma also recognized the danger her ability posed to the kingdom, as rival countries might attempt to capture her powers for themselves by force. Ludwin agreed, recalling a time when Elfrieden had been at war with Amadonia. Marks, the oldest of the group, confirmed this as true. As the conversation grew more serious, Tomo, sensing the tension, walked up to Licia and held her hand for comfort. Soma, realizing Tomo's fear, quickly shifted the conversation, telling her that her powers were a blessing to the world. He knelt before her and promised that they would do everything they could to protect her within the castle. Tomo, however, did not fully understand why such protection was necessary. Soma instructed Ludwin to protect Tama with his guard squad, but Marks disagreed, arguing that this would only attract suspicion from outsiders. Marks suggested a better approach, giving Tama a royal status upgrade. The easiest way to do this, he said, would be for Soma and Licia to marry and adopt Tama as their own child. However, Soma and Licia weren't ready to admit their feelings for each other, so Soma proposed that King Alfred and his wife adopt Tama instead. Licia was thrilled by the idea, as she had always wanted a baby sister. She rushed to hug Tama, but the little girl pulled away, explaining that she already had a family. Tama told them that her mother and little brother lived far away, but Soma reassured her, saying that as a royal adoptee, she could invite them to live at the castle with her. After hearing this, Tama agreed to the plan. Soma instructed Marks to wait a month before announcing the adoption to avoid raising suspicion. But in the meantime, to make Tama's stay seem normal, Soma decided to put her in charge of all the horses in the castle stables, which she gladly accepted. A few weeks later, Soma was in his room, sewing a strange ninja doll, when Licia entered and told him that Tama had finally accepted them as her second family. Just as they were talking, Tama's handmaiden entered, and upon seeing Soma and Licia sitting closely together, she giggled and quickly left, giving them space. She soon returned to inform Soma that Pancho had returned from his food trip. Excited, Soma grabbed Licia's hand and pulled her away, while the handmaiden watched and smiled. When they met with Pancho at the dining table, he proudly revealed that he had traveled across the country on a dragon, gathering the best and most exotic foods from all the states. Licia asked what they planned to do with all that food, but Soma simply said it was a surprise. Hours later, Poncho and Juna announced to the kingdom that the castle would be hosting an exotic buffet. Soma explained that the buffet was set up to introduce citizens to various meal options while he and his team worked on solving the country's food issues. Lycia and the other ladies would be the judges of the buffet. The first dish revealed by Porco was a squishy octopus, which initially disgusted the girls. However, Soma expertly chopped it into small pieces and transformed it into crispy squid kebabs. The girls were delighted by the dish and eagerly asked for second servings. The next dish was presented by Jelly Belly, who offered slender wood sticks. While the girls weren't particularly excited, Aisha recognized them as a delicacy from her community. Soma sliced the sticks into wood chips, added salt and sugar, and after tasting the dish, the judges were surprised by how crispy and flavorful it was. Poncho then revealed the next dish, locusts on plates. While most of the group recoiled, Tama eagerly took a big bite of one's head, declaring that she loved it. Poncho explained that he had used a special spice from Tama's hometown, called mash water, to prepare the dish. Soma, curious, tasted the locust and was overcome with emotion. The taste of the spices reminded him of soy sauce from Earth, and he couldn't help but cry tears of joy. The royal buffet wasn't over yet, though. Poncho brought in the last exotic dish of the day, a slime creature. Slimes were one of the weakest creatures in Landia and were usually targeted by beginner adventurers, but Poncho had found a way to turn them into a meal. The girls were shocked to see that the slime still had a jelly-like consistency. They asked Poncho how he managed to preserve it, as dead slimes usually turned into goo. Poncho explained that he used a special technique from a particular tribe. He struck the slime's nucleus with a stick, destroying it without harming the main body. He then squished the slime into a batter-like consistency, rolled it flat, and chopped it into noodle-like portions. The slime was then boiled with spices. The resulting dish resembled ramen, and while the girls were hesitant, they insisted that Soma try it first. Soma, also nervous, took a bite, and to his surprise, it was the best dish of the buffet so far. Asia and the others joined in and loved the new dishes as well. The country folk were excited about these creative food options, and after showing everyone some life hacks to defeat hunger, Poncho and Juna concluded the exotic food show. A week later, while Soma was snacking on a locust treat in his office, Lycia's maid entered to inform the king that Marx had requested a formal meeting in the throne room. When Soma arrived, he found Marx and Hakuya kneeling before him. To his surprise, the prime minister was ready to step down and pass his title to a younger leader, just like Albert. When asked who could replace him, Marx said there was no one better suited than Hakuya. Soma agreed, making Hakuya the new prime minister. However, Soma begged Marx to remain on the council to help with political matters, and the old elf graciously accepted. Impatient as always, Hakuya immediately began his new role, advising Soma to take a break from his duties as king of Elfrid. He explained that a break would motivate the staff to rest as well, suggesting that Soma go on a date with Lycia. Though Soma wasn't ready to go that far, Marx supported the idea, saying Soma should take Aisha along to add some chocolate flavor to their vanilla cream pie. Confused, Soma went outside to gather the ladies, but was shocked to find them engaged in a heated sword fight over who would get the first taste of his lollipop. Aisha attacked Lycia with a tornado blade jutsu, but the princess swiftly dodged and countered with her killer frost technique. Soma, witnessing the chaos, intervened to stop them from destroying the castle. He commanded them to stop fighting and told them they were all going on a date together, a suggestion from Hakuya. Aisha proposed they visit her place, but Soma declined, explaining that her village was too far for a single day off. Aisha then suggested he ditch the princess and have fun with her instead, but Lycia gave Soma a death stare. Soma assured Aisha it would be a friendly date. The three of them changed into school uniforms to disguise themselves in public. While Soma liked Lycia's outfit, he told Aisha she looked better in her battle suit. As they rode through the city, Soma reminded the girls to keep their identities a secret, instructing them to call him by his second name, Kazuya, for the day. They explored the town, taking a break to talk about how peaceful it was to just be normal citizens. But then, Aisha suddenly stopped the conversation, revealing a hunger emergency. The group rushed to Juna's cafe for a tasty lunch break. Soma spoke to Juna using code names, and she quickly caught on to their secret visit. Keeping their identities under wraps, Juna served them some delicious slime spaghetti. As they ate, Lycia frowned, feeling that Soma treated her differently from the others. Soma explained it was because Juna was so incredibly gorgeous. which led everyone to tease Aisha for being a former warrior turned glutton. Aisha wondered if this was the reason Soma never invited her into his room, but Soma clarified that such a thing was impossible because he was engaged to Laisha. The girls were shocked by this statement and pointed out that in this world, men and women could have multiple partners. Lycia added that if Soma wanted more attention, she was willing to share him with 7 other ladies. Soma, imagining the possibility, found himself daydreaming about such a beautiful harem. His thoughts were interrupted by a couple arguing at another table, and when Soma noticed that the girl had pointy ears, he mistakenly called her a half-wolf. Lycia corrected him, saying she was a hybrid fox, and Juna joked that Soma could start a war with his mistakes. Lycia quickly identified the man as Halbert Magna, the eldest son of a noble family, a hot-headed fool who had attended the same school as her. He was particularly skilled at riding, horses of course. Halbert, a pompous figure, had quite the reputation, and when Lycia asked about the fox girl, she said she knew nothing about her. However, Juna was quick to add that the fox girl's name was Keed Foxia, a powerful mage working under the Special Ops unit of the armed forces. Keed had begged Halbert not to ally with the leader of his state, Duke Carmine, explaining that the Duke intended to rally soldiers for a rebellion against the new king. Despite her warnings, Halbert insisted on joining the Duke's army, hoping to learn more about the art of war. But Keed advised him to follow his father's orders and return home, further chastising the Duke for his foolishness. According to Keed, the Duke was trying to start a rebellion in the middle of a war, a move that would leave their kingdom vulnerable to external threats. As Soma listened to their conversation, he was reminded of a similar discussion with Hakuya regarding the surrounding nations. Hakuya had mentioned that the Demon Lord's attack on Landia had made most neighboring leaders hostile. None of the surrounding countries were prepared for peace. To the south of Elfridin, the nation of Turgus was known for migrating north during the harsh winters, and they might soon invade. To the west, Amadonia had a reputation for supplying mercenaries to the highest bidder, which could spark a deadly civil war within their own country. Back in the present, Soma continued to warn Halbert that he was making a grave mistake. Halbert, ever the fool, argued that he would become the next great duke by aligning with Carmine, claiming that many noble families opposed the new king's rule. However, Keed clarified that only the corrupt nobles were siding with the duke. The fox girl suddenly fell silent when she realized Soma was standing right in front of her. The group moved to an inner room of the cafe to continue their conversation. Keed apologized for Halbert's behavior, but he was too clueless to recognize that they were speaking to the king. Halbert mistakenly assumed Soma was Keed's ex-lover. Keed tried to calm him down, but Halbert, in his usual brash manner, told her to shut up and even attempted to attack Soma. Before he could make a move, Aisha swiftly rose and squeezed his face with one hand, rendering him immobile. Soma told her to let him go, but when Halbert still didn't recognize him, Soma decided to make it clear. He sat down on a chair, assuming a regal posture, and deepened his voice, making sure Halbert understood who he was. Realizing his mistake, Halbert quickly hid behind Keed, but Soma reassured him that there was no need to be afraid. He wasn't going to punish him for aligning with Carmine. Instead, he explained that such a decision would naturally make him an enemy of Keed. Soma warned that if a civil war ever broke out for the throne, Halbert would have to choose wisely. When Keed flashed a cute smile at Halbert, he realized that, to protect her, he had no choice but to support Soma. After the chaotic scene at the cafe, Soma and the girls continued to enjoy their day off. Aisha, as usual, was snoring loudly, like a pregnant cow. Lycia, sensing an opportunity, asked Soma to rest his head on her lap. Initially shocked by the offer, Soma hesitated, but Lycia assured him she was simply making up for her lack of mature melons. Feeling a bit sorry for the princess, Soma reluctantly accepted. When Lycia asked if he was ready to get engaged, Soma replied that he could only marry his true love. Lycia smiled wistfully and said that if it was meant to be, the universe would find a way to bring them together. Back at the castle, Soma was showing off his latest invention to Lycia when her maid, Serena, entered to inform the king that he had some visitors waiting in the throne room. When Soma arrived, he was taken aback to find Keed and Halbert standing with his father, Glaive Magna. Glaive had heard about his son's reckless behavior and had come to apologize on behalf of the family. Soma couldn't resist teasing Halbert about his battered face, to which Glaive replied that he'd ordered his soldiers to beat the spoiled brat after Keed had informed him of the incident. Soma assured Glaive that his son was forgiven, and, impressed by Keed's wise words from their conversation at the restaurant, decided to elevate her to the rank of royal guard. He also commanded Halbert to leave the army and join the Special Ops Unit as Keed's replacement, so the lovebirds could spend more time together. After these announcements, Glaive suddenly requested a private conversation with the king, so the others were asked to leave the throne room. While Soma and Glaive spoke in private, Lycia and the others took a break for tea, with Serena playfully teasing the princess that she could learn a thing or two from Keed and Halbert's relationship. Having worked tirelessly to stabilize the country, Soma decided to unwind for a change. He transferred his consciousness into a toy ninja and used the mascot to patrol the city. Nabu, the ninja, quickly joined an adventure squad after hearing about his remarkable skills. The crew welcomed the masked warrior with open arms. As they explored a hidden dungeon, Nabu's quick defeat of deadly creatures like basilisks and demon spiders left the team in awe. With no way to fight back, the team ran for their lives, narrowly avoiding the creature's burning spit. That night, while Soma bathed his toy ninja, Lycia walked in and was surprised by how much larger the mascot doll had grown. Soma explained that he had asked a local craftsman to make a bigger version of Nabu to help him explore the kingdom's secret passages. A week later, Soma gathered his staff in the throne room to thank them for their dedication in helping him complete the kingdom's paperwork. He praised their sacrifice and revealed that their hard work had secured the funds for a grand new project. As a reward, he promised the men an unlimited supply of PG grape juice for the day, and they all cheered for their generous king. Later, on the castle balcony, Lycia asked about the project. Soma explained that he planned to build a new city within the kingdom to serve as a port for delivered goods. Lycia argued that they already had a seaport, but Soma insisted that this new one would not only generate more income as a bustling port, but would also become a major tourist attraction. He further explained that the new land port would address the kingdom's hunger issues by improving distribution and lowering food prices. Moving to his office, Lycia scolded him for working too much, but Soma responded that she was only complaining because he hadn't done all that hard work on her back. Lycia, concerned for his health, attempted to convince him to slow down, but Soma brushed off her concerns, telling her to summon another hero to rescue her from her loneliness. Despite his harsh words, when Soma fell asleep, Lycia moved closer, whispering sweet words in his ear before giving him a gentle kiss on the cheek. The following day, Soma and his group traveled to the town of Pardum, the site of the future land port, where they were greeted by Ludwin, who was in charge of coordinating the project. When Soma arrived in the village, Ludwin explained there was a problem with the port construction. Some of the villagers opposed it due to an old myth that a sea god would destroy the area with massive waves if any structure was built there. Intrigued by the story, Soma asked Ludwin to take him to the village leader. When they arrived, the leader acted grumpy until he realized Soma was the king. He repeated the same myth, confirming Ludwin's story. Back at the castle, Soma invited Hakuya to discuss the discovery. Soma acknowledged the myth, but explained that the village had been devastated by tsunamis in the past, making the myth partly true. However, Ludwin said no tsunamis had occurred recently. Soma believed that, although rare, a tsunami could occur again, so they would need to relocate the port to avoid a 1% chance of disaster. While Soma and Hakuya discussed the plans, Lisha couldn't help but admire Soma's leadership and started falling for him. She asked Aisha to help ensure Soma's happiness. The project's location was changed and work resumed, though Halbert, now part of the Special Ops, was annoyed that he had to do physical labor. Keed teased him, saying he wouldn't get any foxy styles unless he worked harder. Afterward, in the guest room, Halbert was surprised by how delicious a hamburger tasted. Kaid explained it was Soma's idea, made with spices from the half-wolf tribe. Kaid also praised Soma, stating that his port project would solve hunger and inflation issues in Elfrieden. While they took a break, Soma and Lisha arrived, and Halbert tried to act formally, but Soma told him to stop pretending and call him by his first name from now on. As Soma and Lisha walked back to the construction site, Lisha admired the roadwork, and Soma explained how they coated the ground with special concrete. Anasha, a member of Soma's team, mentioned the trees lining the road, which were from her forest village, and kept out monsters and wild animals. Soma added that the trees were spaced out to prevent creatures from clustering in one area. While discussing nature, a blue bird flew swiftly toward them. Keed explained that it was a kiwi, a messenger animal with special abilities. The bird landed on Aisha's arm and she was shocked to read the message. Her village had been destroyed by a devastating flood, with many of her people lost. Soma immediately ordered Kaid to send their best men to Aisha's village and instructed Aisha to stay strong. Soma then turned to Lisha and asked her to send soldiers and survival packages to the Dark Elf village, asking about the distance. Aisha replied that it was a 2-day journey, and Soma was concerned they wouldn't make it in time to save the survivors. While Soma and Halbert discussed ways to travel faster, a rhino appeared in the street. Soma decided to use the creature to speed up their journey. By evening, they arrived in Aisha's village and were greeted by her father, Waden Udgard. Soma asked him to explain what happened during the flood. Waden told him it had occurred in the eastern part of the village and many of their elves were still missing. Soma ordered Waden to gather the names of the missing and organize a watch party in case of another attack. He gave a motivating speech to the rescue squad, and they immediately began digging through the rubble to find the missing elves. While Soma and Halbert were digging the ground, Soma suddenly heard a sound from under a tree stump. When he called for Halbert's help, they were both stunned to find an unconscious elf girl. The rescue team quickly carried her away, and Halbert marveled at how sharp Soma's senses were. Soma explained that his ability to detect her had been thanks to controlling a toy mouse using his magical powers. Back at the hut, Waden expressed his gratitude for Soma's swift arrival to help their village. Despite their efforts, most of the bodies recovered didn't respond to treatment. Moments later, Aisha entered and informed them that Lycia had arrived with backup and survival items. However, Waden's brother, Ropther, expressed despair, claiming that their efforts were futile. Soma tried to encourage him, suggesting that good food and rebuilding could help, but Ropther's grief was overwhelming. He had lost both his wife and daughter to the flood. Waden apologized on his brother's behalf and urged Ropther to focus on the good memories, though Ropther broke down in tears, blaming Soma for everything. Soma couldn't help but feel responsible. Before leaving the village, Aisha approached Soma and revealed that her uncle had been one of those who refused to cut down trees in the forest, blaming it for the devastation. Soma explained that while the forest's survival might have been more likely with his plans, nature ultimately controlled such events. On the way back, Lycia expressed her feelings of uselessness for not helping in the rescue efforts, but Soma reassured her, saying that her survival packages had saved many lives. Later that evening, Juna entered Soma's room. Seeing how stressed he was from paperwork, she moved closer and gently rubbed his forehead, offering comfort. She told him it was okay to confide in her, and gave him permission to call on her whenever he was feeling lonely. However, while she was speaking, she noticed that Soma had fallen asleep. She whispered a mermaid love spell in his ear before singing him a sweet lullaby. Meanwhile, at the Dukedom of Randall, Carmine and the other leaders gathered for an emergency meeting about how to defeat Soma and take over the kingdom. The Duchess of Lagoon City, Excel Walter, argued that starting a civil war would be foolish, especially when other nations planned to attack. Castor, the Duke of Vargas City, mentioned that Amadonia had promised to support them with soldiers, but Excel wasn't convinced. She questioned Carmine's determination to overthrow Soma, given the progress the new king had made in revitalizing the country. Carmine, however, remained adamant that Soma was unfit to rule because he was a foreigner, unfamiliar with their customs and traditions. Excel accused him of being greedy. The discussion took a turn when Castor's daughter, Carla, entered and announced that she would join the war, motivated by Soma's involvement with Lycia, and the news quickly reached Gaius, the king of Amadonia, who instructed his son Julius to prepare for the invasion of Elfredin. Back at the castle, Hakuya reported that Soma's landport project had greatly improved the food supply. Now, it was time to focus on the next strategic move. Soma knew he would need to declare war against the 3 dukedoms if they continued their rebellion, though he was reluctant to choose violence. But, recalling his responsibility to protect Lycia and the others, he instructed Hakuya to prepare for a civil war. Meanwhile, Gaius addressed his troops, declaring it was time to reclaim the lands Elfredin had stolen. During his speech, Colbert, the Minister of Finance, interrupted, urging Gaius to delay the war, warning of the potential financial loss. Gaius angrily kicked Colbert, but the minister insisted that by invading Elfredin, they would violate the peace treaty set by the Chaos Empire. Gaius, ready to execute him, was stopped by Julius, who pointed out that Elfredin had not yet signed the treaty. Colbert tried to argue, but Gaius dismissed him, declaring that Colbert would no longer serve as the kingdom's finance minister. Soma sat at his office, discussing his plans with Lycia to take on the dukedoms. They headed to the castle's conference room for a virtual meeting with the 3 state leaders. After introducing himself, Soma informed the old leaders that they had until midnight to join his side, or he would consider them traitors of the crown. Excel questioned Soma about his grand plan, to which he responded that he intended to unify all the nation's armed forces under a single command, directly controlled by the king. Castor criticized him, saying that the division of the military was to prevent a rogue king from taking control. Soma disagreed, arguing that the old tactics no longer applied in the modern age, and a unified army was the best way to defeat their enemies. Excel inquired about the land port, but Soma assured her that it would not affect her city's seaport. Grudgingly, Excel knelt and declared her loyalty to him. However, Castor refused to join, saying he would rather fight and die than take orders from Soma. Soma turned his attention to Carmine and asked why he was rebelling. The Lion Man explained it was due to his instincts as an army general. Soma dismissed him as a fool, and the two agreed that the victor in their upcoming battle would claim the other's army. Just as Carmine was about to leave the meeting, Lycia cut off her hair in front of everyone, symbolizing her loyalty to Soma. The following day, Gaius and his army marched toward Altamura, capturing the city's mayor, Weist. The mayor, fearing for his life, promised to surrender the city but asked for time to convince his people. Julius advised Gaius to accept the terms, as it would save their soldiers. Gaius agreed, but demanded the city be handed over the next day. Meanwhile, outside Randall Castle, Carmine's soldiers attacked Seed, Halbert, and the Special Ops team who had built a fortress overnight. Halbert used his fire magic to launch a flaming spear, but Keed realized the enemy was armed with cannons. She worried about the fortress's ability to withstand the cannon fire. A dark elf appeared, using a mystic arrow to destroy one of the cannonballs. The elf introduced himself as Sir, the father of the girl whom Soma had helped rescue from the landslide in the forest village. With Sir's help, the enemy's cannonballs were destroyed, and the fortress doors were broken down. Ludwin and his royal guard squad led the charge, overpowering Carmine's men. The soldiers retreated, and back at Randall Castle, some of the corrupt leaders criticized Carmine's leadership. However, Carmine silenced them with his fierce presence, reassuring them that he had the upper hand with more soldiers than Soma. At Altamura, Mayor Weist returned to Gaius and his army, but broke down in tears, admitting he couldn't convince his people to surrender peacefully. Impatient and relentless, Gaius was ready to sever Weiss's head with his blade, but Julius intervened, suggesting that negotiating with the mayor would be the smarter choice. Weiss dropped a few bags of gold at their feet, signaling his loyalty. He promised again to surrender the city to Gaius's army the next afternoon. However, the Amidonian forces had no idea that Weiss was secretly working with Excel Walter, whom the king had sent to Altamura days before the civil war began. Weiss grumbled about the substantial expenses required to keep the barbarians in check, but Excel reminded him that it was all part of the plan to buy Soma more time. Meanwhile, as the soldiers dined at the fortress, Keed rested her head on Halbert's shoulder, whispering her undying love, no matter how the war would unfold. The next day, Carmine's forces resumed their assault, but Halbert was taken aback when he noticed dozens of dragons from Duke Castor's army soaring above them. The night before, at Varga's castle, Castor's assistant Talmon had met with the Duke to finalize preparations for a counterattack against the king. Castor, however, had made it clear to Talmon that he would face Soma alone, refusing to join the corrupt nobles who sided with Carmine. Just as Castor and Talmon discussed their strategy, Carla rushed in, informing them that Soma's warship, reinforced by wild rhinos, was on its way to their castle. Castor couldn't believe his eyes when he peered through his telescope to see Alfreden's most formidable battleship rolling toward them. Speaking through a gemstone broadcaster, Castor demanded an explanation from Soma, who revealed that his ship would be used to conquer the dragon state. Impressed by the king's audacity, Castor wasn't ready to surrender though. He ordered Carla to rally her dragon squad to take down Soma's ship. As Air Force One ascended to drop bombs on the battleship, Soma's forces launched magical heat-seeking missiles from both sides, throwing the dragons into chaos. Carla and her team tried to find the ship's weak points, using their dragons to unleash flames on its wheels and weapons. But when they realized the ship was deserted, Carla understood that Soma had tricked them into leaving the castle unguarded. Inside the castle, Soma and his team ambushed Castor, catching him by surprise. When the Duke asked how they infiltrated his stronghold, Soma simply replied that he had studied the castle's history in a book. Impressed by Soma's strategy, Castor asked the king to spare his royal advisor and make Talmon the new chief of the Air Force. If Castor was defeated, Soma told him to surrender quietly, but the stubborn Duke drew his sword, prompting Aisha to draw her elven blade in defense of the king. Castor called Soma a coward for not confronting him directly, but Aisha, irked by his taunts, slashed at him. Although Castor parried the strike and mocked Aisha's stance, She retaliated with a powerful swipe, sending him crashing into a wall. Just as he was about to land a killing blow, Nabu arrived, blocking his strike. Lycia appeared from behind, trapping Castor with her ice sword jutsu. Aisha then combined her powers with a supersonic wind blade that shattered the ice and sent Castor sprawling to the floor in defeat. After Castor conceded, he asked Lycia if Soma was truly worthy of being king. She affirmed that Soma was a wise and capable leader, one she would always be loyal to. To ensure Castor couldn't escape, she placed a magical collar around his neck. When Carla returned, ready to fight, Castor stopped her, acknowledging their defeat. Carla, realizing the situation, allowed Aisha to collar her as well. Soma then appointed Talman as the new general of the Air Force and instructed him to send the Dragon Knights to Carmine's territory. Meanwhile, Halbert and Keed were preparing to surrender to Carmine's forces when they realized the dragons were actually on their side, proof that Soma's plan had succeeded. As Halbert greeted the king, teasing him for hiding behind the fortress, Soma joked that Halbert was the type to let his girlfriend pay the bills. Meanwhile, inside Randall Castle, the corrupt nobles were growing nervous due to Soma's constant attacks. They urged Carmine to take control of the situation. However, after consulting with his military assistant about the dire state of their army, Carmine realized it was time to accept defeat and surrender to King Soma. The nobles, desperate to save themselves, suggested using the citizens as human shields, but Carmine, enraged, ordered his men to cuff them with collars. He then instructed his assistant to collar him as well and ordered Beowulf to take charge of the army and hand him over to Soma. Later, as Carmine sulked over a bottle of PG grape juice, Beowulf informed him that Soma had already left Randall, implying that he never intended to capture him, reflected that he had always seen the Duke as his #1 enemy until Halbert's father, Blaive, explained the situation. Blaive revealed that Carmine had only allied with the corrupt nobles to gather the men in one place, making it easier to capture them and rid the kingdom of the fraudsters once and for all. Soma was shocked by this revelation, but Blaive added that Carmine had formed bonds with the crooks because he knew they still had hidden wealth. Carmine had convinced the nobles to spend their money on Zem soldiers, intending to recover it by ransoming them later. Soma, impressed by Carmine's foresight, asked why he had done all of this, and Blaive explained that the Duke had faith in his leadership skills. Meanwhile, in Altamura, as the Amadonian army prepared to attack, Julius noticed someone standing on the city wall. Gaius was surprised to see it was Excel Walter, wondering how she had gotten there so quickly. Julius deduced that Excel had been in the city all along and was siding with Soma. He advised his father to retreat, but Gaius, unwilling to look cowardly, decided to press on. Excel then created a water TV to broadcast Soma's speech to the people of Elfrid, where the king declared that he had defeated both Carmine and Castor in the civil war, but that Amadonia, led by King Gaius, was planning to attack his kingdom. Soma declared war on Amadonia and announced that he had already sent men to destroy its capital. Realizing the imminent threat, Gaius quickly ordered his men to retreat, but while traveling through the valleys that night, they were ambushed by a group of masked archers led by Juna. The attack decimated the Amadonian forces, and when Gaius arrived at the capital, he was stunned to see Elfrid and banners everywhere. Julius tried to reassure his father, saying that Amadonia still had flags up around the castle, indicating that Soma had not yet taken Van. Gaius ordered a full charge against the invaders, and Soma, receiving word of this, gave the command for Ludwin and his forces to fight back. As both sides clashed in battle, Soma stayed at the Elfridan camp with Carla, quietly planning his next move. He declared that he would be willing to give up his life for the kingdom if necessary. Though when Carla asked if he feared death, Soma realized he was only bluffing. As the battle raged on, Gaius ordered his son to escape, believing that they had already lost and that Soma would target the royal family first. Julius tried to persuade his father to retreat, but Gaius insisted that Julius flee to preserve their bloodline. As the Amadonian army approached, a soldier informed Soma of the impending attack. Soma, unsure of his survival, told Carla to entrust the kingdom to Lycia if he didn't return. As the Amadonian forces closed in, Ludwin charged forward. Carla swooped down to confront the real Gaius, and when the warlord was about to overpower her, Nabu quickly arrived to assist. Using his spear to block the attack, Soma appeared and accused Gaius of trespassing on their land. Angered, Gaius attempted to strike Soma, but Nabu restrained him. Soma instructed Carla to ignite his ninja doll with her fire magic, causing a massive explosion that engulfed Gaius in flames, throwing Carla to the ground in the process. When Soma checked on Carla, they were shocked to find Gaius still alive, despite most of his armor being destroyed. As he pressed forward, archers shot arrows at him. But with his dying breath, Gaius threw his sword at Soma, landing near his foot. With Gaius defeated, Soma's forces took over the castle in Van. Lycia observed that the Amadonians had invested heavily in creating a world-class design for their throne room. Bloodwyn informed Soma that Gaius's son, Julius, had escaped the city during the battle, and his daughter, Roroa, had fled with the former finance minister, Colbert. Soma was told that the nation had more weapons than food, so he planned to sell off the surplus weapons to fund the people's basic needs. Soma also decided that the war should end immediately because the Chaos Empire was approaching. Felicia was surprised to hear this, but Soma explained that, according to an international peace treaty, his kingdom was now considered a rebel for invading Amadonia. As they worked to clean up the war-torn city, Ludwin noticed that many of the people still resented Elfred. Later, Juna arrived, and Soma thanked her while complimenting her naval outfit, causing Lycia to feel jealous, which Aisha helped soothe. Soma expressed the need for Juna's singing talents to help unite the people of Elfred and Amadonia through entertainment. A transparent screen appeared in the city, and although Aisha experienced stage fright, Soma reassured her. The first performer was a little girl named Pamel, whose lullaby performance warmed the crowd. Then Juna serenaded the audience before Soma pulled Aisha aside, warning her to stay vigilant as the next performer might be dangerous. The next singer, Margarita, performed the Amadonian anthem with great passion, stirring the crowd. However, after the performance, she declared that she should be executed for treason. Soma rejected the idea, emphasizing his mission to build a unified kingdom where everyone could express themselves freely. Meanwhile, in the Grand Chaos Empire, Jean Euphoria, the leader of the armed forces, told her sister Maria, the queen, of her plans to visit Amadonia and meet Soma. Maria believed Soma would likely surrender Amadonia, but Jean was less certain, knowing that Soma was a pragmatic ruler. As Soma took on his new responsibilities as the ruler of both Amadonia and Elfred, his daily paperwork doubled. Lycia mentioned the growing requests for live shows and outdoor events after Soma encouraged the citizens to express themselves freely. After finishing his work, Soma received a call from Hakuya informing him that a battalion of soldiers from the Chaos Empire, led by Jean Euphoria, would soon be visiting Amadonia, and Pancho arrived with something important to show him. He unwrapped a bag containing a white flower, which he called the Mysterious Lily. The plant's fragrance was strong enough to send anyone into a deep sleep, but Pancho assured Soma that it had been drained of its pollen and was harmless. Pancho then showed Soma the root of the flower, explaining that lily root was a great source of carbs, although Princess Lycia seemed confused. Pancho revealed that there were many mysterious lily plants growing along the rocky areas of Amadonia, which Soma saw as a way to solve the nation's food problems. The next day, Soma, Juna, and Tamo went undercover to explore the city of Vaughn. As they walked through the streets, Tamo was distracted by the beautiful items in the shops, while Juna playfully held Soma's hand. When Juna asked if he wanted her to hold something else, Soma nervously stammered that he was fine. Juna suggested they go to a fancy clothing store to buy Tamo a gift. At the store, Soma let Tamo pick out something she liked, while Juna helped her choose trendy options. Soma later realized that he should give Tamo a pair of shoes he had picked out earlier, and after receiving the gift, Tamo almost cried from happiness. Soma also gave Juna a ladybug hairpin, making her blush. The group continued their day by enjoying lily root dumplings at a park. Tamo eventually fell asleep on Soma's lap like a cute baby sister. However, their peaceful moment was interrupted by Jean from the Chaos Empire, who asked for a moment of their time. Jean admitted she had come to find out if Soma, the hero king, really lived up to his reputation. She had heard rumors about him being a fool for women and had hoped that her sister Maria could use her influence to get Soma to give up Amadonia. Soma denied the rumors, and Jean acknowledged his leadership style, saying it was clear that he knew how to connect with his people. When she asked how he came up with ideas like the Gemstone live shows, Soma explained that such things existed in his home world long before. Jean also apologized for summoning Soma and taking him from his world, but Soma assured her he had long since forgotten about it. She thanked him for taking the throne from Lycia's father and settling Amadonia's debts, though Soma humbly said it was simply his duty as king. Despite their mutual respect, Jean reminded Soma that his actions were violating their treaty, and they would need to have a meeting to discuss the future of Amadonia. Back at the castle, Tamo proudly showed off the dress Soma had bought her. While Soma gave Aisha a fancy lip gloss to ease her discomfort, Leisha received a beautiful silver neck chain. As Soma looked at his new family, he realized that he had made his grandfather proud by creating an amazing family of his own.